Russia. Russia, which occupies a large area on the map, is almost the same as South America. Think of Russia like this: one of its two border neighbors is Norway and the other is North Korea. Its territory covers 1/3 of the world. Russia is so large that 9 time zones pass through its territory. The country at the top of the world for all, but it is not. This small piece of land in Europe belongs to Russia. How did this piece of land belong to Russia? This piece of land called Kaliningrad is only 370 kilometers from Russia. If one of the 500,000 people living in Kaliningrad wants to go to Russia, they have to change at least 2 countries, or they can go to Russia by ferry from the Baltic Sea to Russia's second largest city, St. Petersburg. Or they can go by plane. Kaliningrad is very important for Russia because it acts as an outpost in the middle of Europe. And this is Russia's only ice-free port. Russia is placing a large number of warships and missiles here. If Russia places its ballistic missiles here, it can easily hit capitals such as Stockholm, Warsaw, Berlin, and Copenhagen. I have bad news for those living in Europe. Russia has already begun to deploy its Iskander missiles here in Kaliningrad. At the same time, there is a narrow 65-kilometer chasm between Belarus and Kaliningrad. This is the only place that separates the Baltic states such as Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia from the European Union. If NATO and Russia enter into a hot conflict in the future, this 65-kilometer chasm will not only cut off Russia's aid to the Baltic states, but also establish a major land link from Kaliningrad to Siberia. And again, as I said, warships and ballistic missiles in Kaliningrad can easily cut off aid to the Baltic states. But how did this piece of land that once belonged to Germany come into Russian hands? The story is actually the story of 684 years of history before Kaliningrad, where Russia belonged to the Germans. The city was founded by Germanic knights in the 13th century. 500 years later, in 1758, the Russians occupied the city. However, he remained in his reign for only 4 years. Until 1944, the city was once again in German ownership. More than 2 million Germans lived in this city in the 40s of the 1900s, when the Germans began to be defeated by the Russians in the Second World War. When most of the civilians here migrated to Berlin, the British bombardment began. Civilians. England destroyed the entire city by air and land. In 1945, when there was no stone left on the stone, the Soviet Union took over the city completely. The Russians first changed the name of the city. They changed the name of the city from Königsberg to Kaliningrad. The name comes from Mikhail Kalinin, a close friend of Stalin and a member of the Russian Communist Party. The city had to be restructured. Therefore, 500,000 people agreed to emigrate and the city was rebuilt with ethnic Russians and Ukrainians. In fact, when we look at the event from a logical point of view, it would be more logical in terms of administration to give the administration of the city to Lithuania. However, Stalin did not trust the Lithuanians much and continued to rule this city from the center. After Stalin died, his successor, Nikita Khrushchev, agreed to give the city to the Lithuanians. This time, however, the Lithuanians did not consent. The then Prime Minister of Lithuania thought that 1/3 of the country would suddenly become Russian, and that this would cause a major problem for years to come. In fact, it was the best for them. Because one day someone like Putin may come and bomb them in their own country. They did the same in Ukraine. First they gave Crimea to Ukraine, then they occupied it because it was mostly Russian. The year was 1991. East and West Germany were united. The member of the Soviet Union had now collapsed. After this collapse, 15 different states disintegrated. Kaliningrad remained under Russian rule. In 2010, the German magazine Der Spiegel published one article. According to this article, the head of state at the time, Mikhail Gorbachev, wanted to give Kaliningrad to the Germans. However, the Germans did not accept this for various reasons. However, then President Mikhail Gorbachev denied these allegations. Even if there was an agreement, even if the Russians gave Kaliningrad to the Germans, the reason why the Germans did not accept it is obvious. If Germany accepted it today, sirens in Ukrainian Kiev would now be ringing in Berlin. That's why the British Prime Minister of the time, Margaret Thatcher, was always traveling with a map of the German Empire in her bag. Margrethe's biggest fear was that the new Hitler might want to come out and invade Europe again. Because after Kaliningrad it could be Poland, it could be Austria, and then all of Europe. It created a big problem not only in England, but also in France. The Germans agreed to sign an agreement in order not to break their confidence. According to this agreement, Germany will not accept the merger request from foreign organizations or any other organization. He will renounce all the lands of the former Germany and all his rights over all the lands of the past. As a result, Kaliningrad was again in Russian hands. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia began to shut down. This is Kaliningrad. That's when it stepped in. Russia wanted Kaliningrad, which is no different from European cities. That's why taxes in Kaliningrad were lowered. And he declared this special economic zone. After Poland joined NATO in 1999, Lithuania and Poland joined the European Union, and Kaliningrad was surrounded by NATO countries. Do you think Kaliningrad is losing its importance right now? No. It's even more valuable now, because this is the perfect opportunity for these Rus to fulfill their outpost duty. As I just said, there is one big port in Kaliningrad and one Russian Navy fleet started to be placed in the Baltic Sea, which later turned into one NATO sea. This fleet is crucial for dominating and operating the Baltic Sea. Both Finland and Sweden have applications for NATO membership. If they can join the NATO Union, they can build one defense line in the Baltic Sea surrounded by NATO from St. Petersburg to Kaliningrad. They can also easily conquer the Baltic coast. As you can see, Russia attaches great importance to Kaliningrad. But a person living in Kaliningrad has a monthly income of $500. $1,500 for someone living in Russia. Russia pays attention to Kaliningrad geographically. But economically no.